Hello, my beautiful people. This is Kristen. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is just about the books that I read during November to let you know about them and see if maybe any of these are of interest to you. I had heard from some booktubers that November is nonfiction November. I was already intending to read one and I added another one for that. I heard about it predominantly from a book olive, so if you like book reviews and you haven't seen her channel, you should definitely check her out. The first book that I want to talk about is the one I was going to read anyway, Making Sense of the Bible by Adam Hamilton. The United Methodist Church is coming to its conclusion in February on the rights of same-sex marriage. This is a book written by the pastor who is the pastor of the largest Methodist church in the United States, and he went through again how to read the scriptures, making sense of them, and not only just on the gay rights of marriage within the church, but also such things as the science and evolution, and how do we interpret the different details that maybe contradict themselves, those kind of situations. How do we read the Holy Scriptures in a thoughtful, faithful way that we can truly have the heart and passion of our Creator? So that was a good read, no matter who you are. If you're dealing with those kind of issues, this is from a perspective of somebody who's had a lot of study and a lot of heart, but a lot of compassion and a lot of intelligent thought and weighing it out. So if you're kind of struggling with that, that's an excellent book. Not too long either, about 300 pages, 309 pages it looked like. The next book I read was An American Sickness by Elisabeth Rosenthal. This is a nonfiction book about the healthcare system in America. It spends 2/3 of the book talking about the different divisions, may it be the pharmaceutical or the doctors or the labs or the hospitals, and just the state of the country, kind of how it got there, some of the political laws or situations that contributed to that. It kind of makes you a little upset, but it's good information to have. The last third of the book has to deal with suggestions of what we can do about being informed, or about asking the right questions, talking to the right politicians, those kind of situations. I liked the book and thought that it was well written. I did learn a lot. I did, however, have the critique, if I could talk to the author directly and mention that there was a lot of really great specific stories in the first part, lots and lots of stories about here's this person that was dealing with this situation and here's what happened. I would have loved to have had that in the last part of the book. There was hardly any. I don't really remember a single one of a story that was walked through of somebody who wrote their senator and it mattered, or a person who negotiated correctly with the doctor and it came out better. It was more kind of philosophical at the end, and I would have liked even more stories, if there were any, to highlight that or to encourage me. I'm actually having a surgery this coming week on my sinuses, and I've learned a lot, and I'm gonna do a little vlog probably on that too. But if you're anybody in America, at some point we need healthcare, and it's a good book to give some information and to get a new perspective. My classic was the one I received in my coffee in a classic box, Dracula, and I'm not mad I read this. It's a big book, and this was the book that took me the longest to read this month. It was a slow read, but part of the issue is that because it was, written so long ago, it is really one of the foundational reasons of why we think about Dracula and vampires at all. A lot of the folklore around how we hunt vampires comes from this book by Bram Stoker. So what I like to say, you know how you're watching those horror movies and the light burns out and the person walks into the basement in the dark anyway, and you're like, no, the killer's down there. You know, that kind of sensation. It's like, that's what it's like reading Dracula. It's like, we already know all the folklore and everything, and we're just like, no, why are you doing that? But it's really interesting to see the origins of it. And again, I'm not mad that I read it. It's just a little slower read than I was kind of expecting. I thought maybe there'd be a little more action-packed. My next book I read was Sophie's Choice by William Strom, or Styron, sorry. He wrote, this was kind of, when I asked for classics, somebody suggested this. It is only from 1979, I believe. But this is a story about a young man who moves to New York to be a writer, and he's living in kind of a shared community home. Above him is a couple that lives there, that the girl was over in Germany, Poland during the Nazis and ended up at Auschwitz and had horrors there and made it to the States and is recovering by getting some help from a man who is latched on to her, and they have kind of one of those complexes where he is the savior and also her destroyer, and there is complexity of the current situation and growing up and dealing with that and flashbacking to the information of the war. And if you like things like The Diary of Anne Frank and Night and all those kind of stories, this one is even more earthy and gritty and kind of adult is what I would call it. Those other ones you could read, you know, in even upper elementary or middle school. This is definitely that adult kind of version of dealing with those things and really centering around some of the mental illness and the long-term kind of problems that come from dealing with such terrible, inhumane situations in life. So I found it a fascinating, kind of painful in some way read, but very, very good, and would recommend it to certain people. So definitely people who are mature and have had some reading experience and maybe have some interest in some more stories or some creativeness. If you like reading the stories about writers writing about writing, this is a good book. Speaking of writers writing about writing, I read A 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, also recommended by a Book Olive. And this is an awesome story about a young writer who has just done a little writing, but predominantly her love of books comes from working in a bookstore with her father and just a passion for books. And she dabbles in some writing and biography. And a famous writer who is well known in the story wrote a novel about 13 tales, but there was only 12. And so this mysterious 13th tale centers around her own life. And she comes in contact to ask this young woman to kind of write that final chapter as she is kind of nearing the end of her life. And so it's flashbacks of both of their lives and how they kind of mirror each other sometimes, and the struggle of some of that and dealing with those kind of issues. And so it's a very interesting read, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there were a couple things that I wasn't anticipating or hadn't figured out, so I like that in a book. It's a good fiction read. The last one I read was Jimena. This is by Kaufman and Kristoff, and this is the second in the Illuminae series, and this is the one that they're thick books, but they all have the emails and memos and post-it notes and artwork. And if you like Star Trek, if you like sci-fi, if you like time continuum kind of paradoxes, the prime directive, and when do you decide what life or what decisions are of greater value, and or you like Maze Runner, Hunger Games, those kind of teenage against society trilogy angsty kind of things, this is it. Or this kind of graphic kind of thing. I know this drives some people crazy, so be noted if that drives you crazy, this is not the book for you. But if you like that, this was outstanding. This is probably the favorite book that I read out of all the books that I read this month. And I look forward to getting the third one and probably reading it, if not December, by January, I will have the third one read because I look forward to hearing the conclusion of that story. I thought it was well done, and unlike the first one, I really liked and appreciated how this one ended, and that's my wrap up of that. So I am going to hopefully do a few books in December. I do have surgery, so I might have a couple audio books to listen to when I recover for that. And hopefully, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up or even subscribe so you can see the notification of the next one. I do a bunch of random videos. You don't have to watch them all, but hopefully here and there you're going to get one that helps you, and I appreciate watching other people's videos and all the comments that people leave. If you have a book recommendation of something that sounds similar to something I liked, please leave it in the comment and say, hey, you might want to check out this book. I really do look those things up and take them seriously. I love people's recommendations. Actually, Sophie's Choice was recommended by a former youth of mine, Holly, so thank you, Holly. That was a very intense and enjoyable read. Y'all have a super blessed day and a happy holidays. Bye.